So, you may now be asking, how does this Gen X dude get to a place where he decides he's leaving the United States? Well, I wasn't initially going to leave the United States. Initially, I had a, a big plan, a big semi retirement plan. And that was that I bought a boat. Um, the proper terminology is a yacht. Uh, Several years ago, probably about back in like 2020 now, and it was a 42-foot Jeanneau sloop. Great boat, the Dream Genie. I had been looking at buying one for some time, and I spoke with my buddy Eric about it, and he grew up in a big boating family. His dad, co-founders of Cape Dory Yachts, and I was like, "Dude, I'm gonna do it this time," because before that, I had a little boat, like a 26-foot lake boat, day sailor, and I really wanted to do some time out there on a more regular basis with all of the accoutrement for having a good time at sea. And ultimately, Eric, knowing that I was looking for a big boat, was out one day. We both grew up in the South Shore of Massachusetts, and Eric was out one Saturday morning on his boat, just cruising around, and found the Dream Genie 2, and sends over to me these pictures of this boat. I was like, dude, like, you definitely want a boat like that, but that one's probably going to cost me a little too much money. And he said, well, I don't know, man. I think the guy might want to get rid of it. You should really, check it out. He's got a few boats. And, when you are a boat owner, you know that the first day of ownership is the best day, and the last day of ownership is the best day. And, it's seldom that you really get what you want to get for your boat when you sell it. So I was like, all right, well, check it out, see if we can get in there and check it out. And I actually live in Pennsylvania, and then Eric lives in Massachusetts. So I went up there and checked the boat out, and I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. And I basically came back to the guy. It was the end of the season, and I came back at him and I said, listen, this is almost the way I negotiate a little bit. I just think it's a reasonable way to deal with other people. As I said, hey Brian, I'm assuming you're gonna want roughly this much, and I kind of want to pay like this much if I had my best day. So why don't we just meet in the middle at this number and not go through all the BS of the haggling? I can't stand haggling. A real deal comes together when both people walk away a little butthurt. So that's how that worked out. And the guy was cool. And he was actually so cool that he gave me his mooring for the next summer and took what was then going to be my boat back up to his house where he had it stored, and stored all winter, and then brought it back and put it in the splashed it in that next spring. So it was really just a match made in heaven. And Brian's just such a great guy. So the idea was Eric would be more of my captain on that boat, because I can get around a 26-foot sloop pretty easily. I'm not bragging, but I definitely know how to do that much, and certainly on a lake, which is a lot different than a 42-foot yacht on the ocean. So the thought was Eric would be my captain, and he spent some time kind of getting some things in order in the boat, and I would drive up, weekends, about every other weekend for a minute, and we would go out on the boat and do boat things, boat brothers, and it was great. And I knew though that my real goal at the end of the day was to get that boat to Maryland. And the reason why was that I had been looking at real estate there. So what I do with my real estate is I'm not stuck in, oh, I saw houses in Pittsburgh or Denver, or I'm only going to invest in real estate in the United States. So I've actually had a property abroad before. I had a property in Bulgaria. I lived in Brazil for some time in a high-rise, luxury apartment thing back in the early 2000s when I took my first hiatus. And but bottom line is that I look at different areas throughout the country, throughout the world, and see where you can get a good value, good buy for value on real estate. Maryland, I had been looking at for like 5 years, and just watching how in 2008 the economy had gone to crud because of, oh, you know what? It was the Republicans in office then. That's right. They were the ones that did the blow up then too. But anyway, I saw that there was some good waterfront or water proximate property in that area, and that's what I wanted. And initially, I thought, I'm going to build a container house. I'm going to build a shipping container house, and I just need some raw land, and I'll get a electric drop and propane gas and whatever it took to do this. But I got lucky, and I found this building. I found a church that was church. I found this church that needed renovations, and the big problem was that the two of the trusses had come out from the roof, and from the weight of just them reshingling and reshingling and reshingling. And but it was just a bow in the back of the roof when I first saw it. It was just a bow, and I knew that somebody with a brain who was in the roofing industry could fix that. And then we'd do a tear down, and then we would just re-roof the church, and then I could get to the part I like. The part I like is whether it's the colors, the textures, the flow of things, the staging, the way it looks. I thought I'll get to that next, and I was out buying, on Facebook Marketplace, buying used Miele coffee, built-in coffee dealer deals, and I bought a great old Wolf oven, 36-inch Wolf oven. I mean, I was so excited. Bought all this stuff, 2 Thermador dishwashers, just you name it, and a Wolf oven wall unit, double hung with the warm bread warmer. I was so excited. Anyway, I got a guy who said he could do it. I ended up getting the electric redone, and he had sent his guys down there for like 2 weeks. I had managed finding him, the equivalent of an Airbnb lady that was willing to rent her place to them for a few months or a couple of months. And this guy, Robert McIntyre, he ended up destroying the roof of the church. First, I went out and I was like, dude, like that, you're not gonna just prop that up and build this up. Like, just looking at what was being done, I was off, but I'm not a roofer. I don't know that stuff. So, well, I guess I do, because I knew from the onset that that was not the way to fix the roof. And ultimately, this guy on this beautiful building that could have just been really cool, it could have had a lot of the traditional air marks and a modern facade to it on 2 acres. There was a schoolhouse as well. The schoolhouse had to come down. It was termite infested, and you don't want to try to work with termite infested wood. But I would have had 2 acres, and the big plan was that the schoolhouse would come down. I would do about a 1,400 square foot shipping container building there, real modern and cool and stuff. Then the church was 4,000 square feet, and inside the church, that would be my main home, my home. I told Eric, dude, when you get retired and all, you could move on into the school. And then I had enough room to do like probably three small A-frame kind of buildings as well. And that was gonna be my complex, to be frank, I think big. And when that roof went, the numbers just went through the roof because there was no roof when Robert was done. And gosh, I went back and forth with what do I do? Do I pull the whole thing down? And the guy named Chad Church that grew up in the Catholic Church and went to Sunday school and all that stuff wasn't really digging the concept of yanking down a church, the stained glass, all the, you know, not exactly great mojo when one does that. I was just trying to figure out what I was going to do. And if I did finally land on, you got into this because you've got 4,000 square foot foundation, an electric drop that's already there with a box that's already there, or a new upgraded box after that was more wasted money. What happened after some thought went on about how expensive things could get, I decided that I would sell it. And so it was kind of like, do the church got screwed up. Now I'm going to sell it. I put it on the market for a little bit, and that didn't work out for like a year. And then all of a sudden I was like, you know what, I'll do I'll do the shipping container thing on the church. And that it just you can't do that with a 6 hour ride. So I decided, okay, I'm going to try and sell it again next year. And I had it on the market for about a year, and this great guy Eric down in Maryland put it got it together for me. Finally, not at the level of gain I would have liked to have gotten off the land that I bought, because I'm going to go back there at some point and drive by, and somebody's going to have this compound that's $1 million compound that they didn't have to pay much money to have, and I'll be okay with that. I will be okay with that now. It is what it is. I'll be happy for them. That's what I will be. So, because I'll have my own stuff, right? The boat was going to be in Maryland. I found this property that was going to be in Maryland, and I was just going to kind of head out to mm, away from the craziness that we're in now since 2016, 10 years of just whack job craziness. I wanted to get away from things and be in a place where I could, have a garden, be self-sufficient pretty much, and be away from a lot of the full-on crazy and driving through the streets of the city and people are whipping you off and running up on your back and stuff. I was just over it, and I figured that would be a great way to kind of, settle into what happens next in life, which is I'll be older, and at some point there's going to be not the flexibility I have now. Anyway, I ended up after I decided I was having so much in the way of problems with the church. I looked at the boat, and I'd been out a bit in the boat, and in fact, we sailed it. My buddy Sam and I sailed it from Massachusetts down to Maryland. My friend Anya, she drove her car and kind of followed us and stuff, and that was cool. But I could not really manage that boat on my own. And friends say, "Oh yeah, I have some friends that sail," and "Oh yeah, we'll come down, we'll sail." And time goes by, and when you're sitting on a boat and the boat is just sitting on a slip, all you're doing is destroying the boat because the boat needs to get used. And I decided I'll sell my boat. So I put my boat up for sale, and that took about a year. to get rid of, but it kind of coincided, kind of off by a year, with the sale of the church and the boat. So the boat went first, actually, and then the church went after. And, when you see this epic fail stuff, the epic fail is the church, right? I am so disappointed in myself because I was so excited at the beginning of this to, like, it felt like kismet or something. When I was there, I was finding feathers on the ground that, my sister, I feel like that represents her when I see those. Some of the little nuances in the church, and the church being a church and me being Chad Church, just kind of came together, and I felt like that was the perfect place for me to be at that point in my life. But I'm not there now. It's not mine now. So when I look at it as an epic fail, I hate that the destruction that took place at that church took place while I was, I mean, I guess if you don't want to make excuses, in charge, right? I hired the knucklehead, and then another knucklehead to fix his problem, and then his problem, he just basically cleaned up some stuff and ran off with a bunch of money. So I was not happy with him, and he was in a bad place in his life, and blah 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 blah. But I don't understand how, because you're in a bad place, you think I should go into a bad place and pick up your destruction. I don't understand that about people. And so I'm looking for a place that's more grounded morally, ethically, just in the way that people treat other people. And I mean, I lived in Bulgaria for a while, and the people there are awesome. I would very easily go back to Bulgaria too, but it's gotten more expensive there. So I found that Italy offers me a option of being 20 minutes from the Tyrrhenian Sea, or 30, 35 to the Ionian. And I have a property that is 5,000 square feet. It's a pretty good sized place that I found. It was built in 1984 versus being built in 1920, and the roof isn't falling in on it. But you'll get a maybe maybe you'll get a charge out of, maybe you'll just cry, like I did a couple of times, about what happened to this church. But I'm going to tell you what's coming up here next, when I can get into that property, is just going to be really, really cool. And one thing that people need to understand about purchasing property in Italy, they're going to tell you bada bing, bada boom, it's going to happen so quick, and you can just, whiz along. And there are some delays, and you have to be ready for it, period. No matter how cool you think you are. I was like, oh, I'm ready, I understand, I read all those posts in the social media, and I understand that people wait forever, and that's not what I thought was going to happen to me. But it seems, as my friend Megan would tell me, Chad, you knew this going in. All you had to do is go back to a bunch of the social media that you were taking in for the previous year or whatever, and look and see, and you'll remember that it takes a minute. So I'm thinking sometime this winter I'm going to get there. There's no time like the present than to start your journey on something. And so what I'm going to do here is, like I said, you'll get some real estate, you'll get me harping about, what color to paint that room, or whatever, with the design element. And then also I'm still going to try to hit at least one or two more countries before I get to Italy now, because now that I know I got to wait a little longer, I gotta do something. So there'll be like a weekender, extended weekender, where I, get a lot of cocktails and a lot of relaxation, just chilling. And we'll see what those places look like from that perspective. And of course, I'll be like, and this is where I got the deal. this is where I got what I think is a deal. And I'll share that with you. And we'll fill it in with some of my real estate work and design work, like I said. And from there, hopefully by, sometime this winter, we'll be getting on the plane and doing the whole, well, before getting on the plane, doing the whole, how do you wrap up a life? It's a good thing that I've disassembled lives before, and the level of, I guess, just the sheer volume of stuff that you get. I don't have that like I did when I lived in Denver and moved to Prague. At this point, it's still a pain in the butt. You got to deal with all the knuckleheads that you can find on Marketplace and so forth. But I will share that part of getting there as well. And then as we go, a little more of the finer nuances that are associated with a move to Italy, Reggio Calabria, baby.